Excuse us for the technical difficulties and being late. There's Jody.
Yeah.
Welcome to the latest edition of Performance Formula Live podcast. We're very pleased to have you here. Apologies again for the technical difficulties and being late. Hi, Jodes.
Hello. Yeah, the technology, right? It has its moments.
All right. Well, enough of that. Let's just get straight into it, right?
Yeah. I'm excited about today, right? I think we're covering a topic that, as a mental performance coach, often gets asked about. Yeah.
Yes. So today is seeing success, the mental imagery for performance, and so what are we talking, Jodes? Are we talking visualization here? What are we talking?
Yeah, we're talking visualization, right? But if we use that word as we say that word, often it's only associated with images, mental images being made. And so if you look at the psychology literature, essentially there's a distinction being made between visualization and mental imagery. And so it's in part why I chose the topic as mental imagery rather than visualization. Even though mental imagery still speaks towards the image, the understanding is that you engage all of the senses in this process more, and maybe at the outset, before we get into this conversation, and maybe the technicalities of it, the what's, the hows, the whys, all of these things, I think it's important to understand that this is a skill. Just like for cricketers, they cover drive, or for golfers, they chip or they putt, or for rugby players, they kick through the posts, or for swimmers, they stroke or they dive or whatever, or for a footballer, kicking the ball. This is a mental skill. It's an ability you learn. It's not necessarily something that works and is a magic wand. It is a skill that you get better at. It's something that you practice. It's something that you engage with, just like you would engage with whatever skills is in your sport. That's an important decision to make.
So something that you actively, on a regular basis, hone, practice, as you say, and bring into your general process.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you do that over time is when you get the benefit from that. A lot of the time athletes engage with us and they seek the miracle from it, right? They do it once and it works. They do it another time, it doesn't work, and they go, it's a waste of time. And I want to caution against that if you're interested in the mental game and you're interested in the benefit that mental imagery or visualization can give to you, then to see it as a skill, to see it as something that you can practice just like you practice your other skills, that's when you get the benefit from it. And just like your other skills, sometimes they show up and they work really well, and sometimes they show up and they don't, and it's I think to treat it from the outset as similar to that is a better approach to this topic than just saying it's either working for me or it's not working for me. There is definitely benefit in it, and it's you're engaging with learning it and practicing it that brings the benefit, rather than just, I'm going to do it once, and if it doesn't work for me, well, too bad, All
right, cool, Joe. That makes sense. Look, before we get into the technical aspects of it, how it works, what it can do for you, what is it and why it works, we've got a clip. We've got a clip that we'd like to share, and then we can talk further after that.
Yeah. So maybe just as a heads up, this clip is from Mookie Betts. I have no idea who this guy is. We found it, and it's like such a cool little clip on what this guy does. It's from Instagram page called The Real Dodger Hogs, where we took this clip from. Okay, here we go.
Train your mind muscle.
Man, I would say I probably take at least 10, 20, 30, 40 at bats at night before I go to sleep.
For the next day?
For the next day. visualize and just constantly visualization of just what I want to do, how I want to do it, when I want to do it. And eventually it just becomes second nature. But you have to do that. If you don't visualize, then your brain's not going to know what's real and what the possibilities are.
What does that look like in practice? Is it going about your business in the house? Or are you going and closing your eyes and intentionally doing it like that?
I mean, for me, I made sure there are mirrors throughout the house. And if you look in my house, there are bats strategically placed throughout the house, because you never know when you're going to get the urge to want to hit and look at the swing. So I have bats, and I go grab one and go get in front of the mirror, then I go put it back, and I may take 3 or 4 bats in those couple minutes, and then I go play with Kinley, and then I go may take 3 or 4 more bats, and then I go with my wife, and then I go take and throughout the day, those are mental at bats, visualization that when I'm out there, my body has done it 100 times last night, so it knows what to do right now.
Joyce, I like that last bit that he says there. It's like his body has done it 100 times that night. So when he goes out to perform the next day, he knows what to do.
Yeah.
Pick up on that a little bit.
Yeah, my first impression is baseball sounds like a cool experience live, because there's that music playing in the background and people banging on stuff, and that's sort of where I drifted there for a moment. I think I've listened to like the content of that video a couple of times. That for the first time I'm hearing that there's actually all these other sounds and noises in there.
The organ music.
Yeah, the organ music, right? No, definitely. I mean, I think that's the point of all of this, right? That's the point. Is if you're an athlete and you're thinking of engaging in mental imagery or visualization, then it is about that. It's about creating the familiarity for your brain in moments of pressure. So I remember years ago hearing somebody talk about a South African tennis player who used visualization or mental imagery so vividly that the first time he went to play on Wimbledon, he walked onto Wimbledon and wasn't overawed. It was like he knew exactly where he was. He could smell it, taste it, feel it in his body. So it's about creating familiarity. When the mind isn't familiar with something, then it's easy for the stress and the panic to set in. It's easy for us to not be in our optimal state, right? That cocktail that we've been speaking about, it's easy for the cocktail to be out of whack. Where when I go into an environment that's familiar to my brain, it's like, oh, I've been here before, I've seen this, we've solved all the problems, all the challenges that can come, then it creates a sense of familiarity for the mind and the body. And so then which then essentially frees us up to perform more optimally in that moment, right? The thing that stands out for me in the video is his unique style, right? So often, and the guy asks him straight up, so what do you do? Do you go like, close your eyes? And I was like, no, I found my own way. I got mirrors around my house. I got bats strategically placed, and I almost like do it as an ebb and flow through my daily life. So I'll take a couple at bats, then I'll go play with somebody. I don't know if it's his daughter or a dog, or I really don't know. I'm assuming it's a child of his. I say daughter, maybe it's a son. So he's found a way to integrate it. So it's not a case of, okay, well, I'm going to go sit on my bed now like a, I don't know, monk or whatever, and now is time to visualize. I think at times when we force our brain into it, you might get a bit of resistance. I've found that the people who engage with it almost like as this sort of an ebb and flow thing, it's easier to engage with than it is to say, okay, I've got to schedule 10 minutes every morning to do my visualization. Having said that, that also works for some people. So I think the importance is to understand how you work and how you function in terms of scheduling or in terms of engaging with the skill. You might go for your team practice and it's scheduled from 10 to 12 in the morning or 2 to 4 in the afternoon. But your visualization or your mental practice as with the skill could happen when you're at school and you're walking down the path between classrooms. that could be a good time to do it. It could be at the nets, maybe before you bat. It could be in your house, standing. I think we've alluded to Steve Smith before, standing in your room at night and tapping your bat on the floor, right?
Driving his teammates mad while they try to sleep.
Yeah, and so I think it's important to be aware that to engage with us in a really good way. I think it's such a cool opportunity. It's something you can experiment with, is to say, well, how do I do this? Yes, the skill that can add a lot of value to my performance. How do I engage with it? How do I do it in my way? How do I, how do I sort of get it to a place where I get the benefit from it, but it doesn't feel like it's this chore or this tedious thing. Oh, geez, I forgot to do my visualization,
Yeah, now look, and with all these topics and all these various things we talk about each week, we often say that the trick is to integrate it into your daily routine so that it's part of what you do. You're comfortable, it's got your flavor, it has your personality, and it adds to who you are as a person and as a performer, as an athlete. That's the key. But I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, okay, so visualization works. We hear a lot of famous, successful athletes and performers talking about visualization. But there might be a lot of people out there going, okay, so I'm going to think about doing something, and it's automatically going to make me be able to do it in performance. So let's take a bit of a step back here, and let's talk about visualization and how it actually works, and what is it at its base, and how can you incorporate it into your process. I mean, for example, you hear about athletes visualizing that moment that they walk into a stadium, visualizing that moment that they are successful, winning a match, winning a game, having a cup put in their hands or a medal around their neck. And they've felt all those feelings before, and they've heard the sounds and smelt the smells and all those things. But let's take it right back to the beginning, and because there'll be a lot of people that are skeptical about things like this. So what is it actually, and what can it do for you, and how does it work?
Yeah. So the first thing I want to say about this is that we actually all do it all the time, because it's how your brain works. Our brain, you and I are speaking English with each other. In South Africa, we have 11 official languages, which most I don't understand. But I can speak English and Afrikaans. But the language of your brain, the things your brain works with, is sensory-based information. So it's your sight, your sound, your smell, your taste, and your feeling, right? And not feeling as an emotional feeling. I mean, feeling of the wind blowing, the wind blowing on your skin, or you touch something that's hot, right? Physical feeling, right. Sensory-based feeling. So your brain tries to make sense of what's happening in the world around you all the time through your senses. And so it is creating images of what is around you all the time. So as you're sitting in your room there, and I'm sitting in my room here, if I look at the door over there, my brain is seeing that, right, through my eye. And so it can create, there's a door. The cool thing about our mind is that we can sort of create these images. We can also be the creators. So in as much as your brain takes in the external world and tries to make sense of things through your senses, we have within our hands the power to control our sensory system. Okay. An example could be, like, let's say there's an argument between two people. One person can hear something, and because of what they heard, they create an image of how this is the worst thing in the world, and now the fight blows up, right? Right. And so we create things in our minds all the time about everything that we do, quite naturally, because it is the language of our mind. It is how our mind sort of functions and operates and works, so that our brain can make sense of the world around us, right? And so there's often in sport a disconnect between, like, let's say you have an expectation. That expectation will have an image in your mind. It'll have a feeling in your body. It'll have words that's attached to it. It'll have potentially smells and tastes that come with it, right? If you have an expectation of a nice meal, then automatically the juices might start flowing. And then when you get to the restaurant and the meal doesn't taste like that, you go, oh, geez, that's a bit of a letdown. Why is it a letdown? Because you created before the time how that meal's going to taste. So we have this ability that our mind works in a way. It's got these languages of our sensory information as well as language, the language that you understand. And then we have this ability to actually take charge of that in terms of designing the experience that we want on the inside. And so really all visualization for sport is to say, how do we get our minds familiar then with the pressures that we face in performance, so that we can be ready, so we can walk in there and we are not thrown curveballs, as an example. So my brain sort of knows, okay, cool, when I get there, I'm going to be facing a ball like this. I'm going to face this bowler. This bowler is going to try and get me out like this. This pitcher is going to, throw at me like that. And I'd imagine that that's maybe what he's doing. He's not getting into so much detail, but he says he does like 30 to 40 at-bats. Now, he might say, okay, cool, this time I'm watching this pitcher pitch at me that I'm going to face in tomorrow's game. And sort of which ones am I leaving? How do I know when it's on the corner of the strike zone, right?
Right.
What am I looking for to know that this is the one I'm swinging at? Yeah.
He's creating various scenarios that may or may not arise during the course of a game.
Yeah, and so I think this is an important distinction, right? Because a lot of the time, and I mean, you mentioned it, right? A lot of the time when people visualize, they only see the perfect. They only see themselves scoring the 100, smashing it out the park, putting the medal around their shoulders. And although there's value in that, like no visualization is, say, wrong. I think from a performance point of view, that type of visualization for me is more something to generate motivation, maybe an excitement. So like I'm excited at being in that moment. I'm excited about getting that medal around my shoulders. I don't know if there's real value in seeing the outcome when it comes to an actual performance. So my sense is...
So maybe, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but so maybe then that type of visualization of the outcome is something to motivate you on those days where it's cold, it's wet, you don't want to get up and go and train. We all have that. We don't always feel like we want to jump out of bed and whistle Dixie every single day. So you talking about those moments, that kind of visualization for that, whereas specific visualization, i.e. a batter visualizing or actually having a bat in his hand and swinging and going through a bunch of different scenarios, or a bowler with a ball in his hand, going through a bunch of different scenarios. That now is, I just saw a whole bunch of balloons go across the screen there. That was kind of weird.
What was that? Well, somebody's celebrating you, right? Somebody's celebrating you and saying, hey, Justin, you need balloons for today, right? Put a smile on our faces. Isn't that a great visualization? In the middle of nowhere, we got some balloons floating through there.
I'll take it. I'll take it.
So maybe just sort of following on off what you say, right? So I believe there's 3 different types of visualization as a basic that you can do, maybe 4, right? 4 different, not maybe, there's 4 different types of visualization that you can do. The first one is this one that we spoke about now. It's motivation, right? It's when we spend time reminding ourselves why we're doing something, and it's normally in the future. And so that is for that motivation, inspiration type energy for moments when, oh, geez, I don't want to wake up now and go train. Okay, but hang on, I'm doing this for this reason. Let me sit down and just get my head plugged into why. Okay, great. And then and that'll have that effect that it kickstarts the sort of energy in our body. The second one could be for confidence. Sometimes people are low on confidence, and when they're low on confidence, a visualization or a mental image sort of exercise or activity could be really good. So normally when athletes engage with us, they get told, see a past performance, especially a past positive performance, some place where you did really well, maybe the previous time you played against this opposition and you dominated them. And so the idea is to generate a sense of, okay, sure, I got this. I can do this, get the confidence up, right? The third type is for learning, so motor learning. So learning a skill. So right now I'm working on shifting my weight to improve some part of my performance. So I could take some time and play that through my mind and almost like educate my brain on, okay, for learning purposes and for skill learning purposes, I can see myself doing this. Take a silly example. A cricketer hits the ball up in the air regularly. So they can sort of see how they hit the ball later. Every time they hit it, they hit the ball to land in a certain place, and they feel themselves timing the ball a little bit later and and they can see the ball traveling on the ground, right? So there can be like a motor learning component to imagery and visualization. And I think there's a very specific strategy that you can engage with that one in particular. I'm not going to get into that now, but we can maybe touch on it a bit later. And then the last type is the performance type visualization or mental imagery. It's the ones where you go through your performance. You physically go through the performance in terms of how you want to play it out. And you sort of plan for the things that could go wrong. I think this might be a good time to just play this quick little clip of Michael Phelps. Seeing that we're on this idea. Let me see if I can just find it quickly.
Perfect timing.
Right. Yeah, just in terms of what he does. And I mean, he has a guy, right, that's an Olympian. I think most decorated Olympian ever. I don't know if, well, certainly right up there, right? Most medals won.
28 medals, 23 golds. He's the most decorated Olympian of all time.
Yeah. So this is a quick little clip that we got from the Mentor House. So it might just take a moment to load this thing up.
For me, I was taught at a very young age by my coach to literally try to prepare myself to do this. So it's like I would do like relaxation stuff when I was laying down to try to shut like if I'm going to bed, like I had like a relaxation process that I would go through to help me relax and help me go to sleep. But also I play how my race should go, how it could go, and how I don't want it to go. So whatever happens, I'm prepared for it. Say I go out and my suit rips or my suit doesn't, like the tie snaps, like, okay, well, I know I have X amount of time to get it off and get a new one back on. And so I'm not freaking out and not just emotionally having like a breakdown.
Credit for that one is Mastery Blueprint.
Yeah.
Just for the record.
Yeah, off Instagram. So I think there's a cool example, right, of maybe steps that you can follow in a more performance-based mental imagery or visualization type session. I think it's important to point out the idea of relaxation before the time. So before we do any visualization thing, to be able to just get ourselves a little bit more relaxed. Normally breathing is a good way to do that, as well as visualizing some water flowing over your body, seeing a light in a specific place, slowing down your breathing. There's many strategies, right, through which you can do this, but there's normally some relaxation thing that happens before any visualization. I think it just primes our mind to be more focused on the task at hand. That would be the primary thing for me. That
more present.
Yeah, it's like, oh, okay, I'm here now doing this thing. Like, let's just relax into this. I mean, Mookie doesn't speak about it in that way, but I can imagine that if he takes the bat, then part of his process might be to relax himself before every ball he hits. Maybe he's focused on a couple of breaths. He didn't go through the details of what exactly he's practicing. But I can imagine if somebody is engaging with us and they're sort of going through their performance and they're going through their at-bats, that they're going, okay, cool, I'm standing back from the plate. I'm taking a couple of breaths. I'm stepping up to the plate. This is how I get ready. I say to myself, watch the ball, whatever it might be that's important, or see the hand, or I don't know. And then when the ball comes, they're looking for specific things. He might be, oh, it's there. Okay, I let that one go. Oh, it's there. I let that one go. Oh, it's there. Boom, that's the one I'm hitting. And so performance, when we visualize, so we always relax first. And then, if we think of the Phelps stuff, how should it go? In other words, how do I want this race to play out? I want to break this world record. So see all the great things. How could it go? It could go like my straps on my pants break. It could go that I'm arriving late to the event and I'm in a bit of a rush. It could be that I'm held up somewhere. It could be that my stomach's uncomfortable. It could be that my earphones is not working through which I want to play my music. There's many things that could be. And so you play through all of these scenarios, right? There's a part of me that says it's really great, but there's also a part of me that's very aware that you can't hit all the scenarios. So I think even visualizing for something like, what if something happens that I'm not ready for? Then what? That I'm not prepared for? What if some curveball comes that I'm unaware of, right? If anything happens, this is how I want to respond to it. And so
right.
you can essentially, through the mental imagery, build your responses to things rather than being reactive. And so that will always give us a sense of control in performance, versus I'm standing there and something happens that I'm not expecting, and it's a curveball and it throws me for a loop, and my self-talk goes off the wire, and my breathing goes out of whack, and I'm freaking start sweating, and my feet don't want to move anymore, and my heart's pounding, and I'm getting the shakes, and all of a sudden I don't know what's happening. My mind's all over the show. I'm not clear. Well, then we're in an absolute mess, right? And so I think my understanding is that mental imagery or visualization is the practice through which you can speed up your experience. So a lot of people go out and they go, oh, shucks, the strap on my thing broke. I was nervous. I panicked. I'll learn from that for next race. Where when we engage in this practice, it's like we can just speed up so many things. Technically, we can say, okay, well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? What if that happens? Okay, what if something happens that I'm not sure, I can't even think about, but it happens? How do I want to be? And so we can preempt failures in performance by preparing our mind and our body about how we want to respond, rather than just reacting to moments and then learning about it afterwards and saying, okay, now I've gained from this experience. We can essentially mentally create the experience before the time, so that when it happens, we're ready for that.
I'm getting that this is a facet of mental preparation, right?
Yeah.
It's one facet of it.
Yeah.
Jodes, this idea of visualization it really interests and fascinates me. I've heard a lot spoken about the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. So how does visualization fit into that? I mean, is it true that the unconscious mind doesn't know the difference between the reality and not? Can we use that to our advantage with visualization?
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm not 100% an expert on all of that stuff, right? Here's my understanding of it, that sport happens too fast for the conscious mind. Most sports, let me rather say, most sports happen too fast for the conscious mind to keep track of it, for the conscious mind to control everything, right? And so that's why we spend hours and hours and hours hitting a golf ball, hitting a cricket ball, kicking a ball, is so that we can build the skill, the mechanism of the skill into our unconscious mind, where it can play on autopilot, where it can sort of run on automation. And so often performance gets tripped up because we become too conscious of things, and in particular, too conscious of ourselves. So if I'm standing there and all of a sudden I walk out to bat, and it's the first time I walk out and there's 30,000 people watching me, all of a sudden I become conscious of me, where normally I'm not worried about me. I'm just out there, it's me and the ball, and I play, right? And so mental imagery can help to say, okay, well, what if one day I'm standing in front of 50,000 people? What if I can't hear my batting partner at the other end? Am I going to be so about, oh, shucks, I hope I'm walking right. Is my shirt tucked in properly? I hope I don't fail. I hope I don't look like an idiot. Or am I going to go, right, it's me, the ball, let's play, you know, call nice and loud, let's go. And I suppose for some people that might come naturally, right? They don't have to do any mental practice and it just happens naturally, you know. But I would imagine that we can say naturally, but maybe behind the scenes all their life, they've been playing these images through their head without them even knowing it.
Right.
You know, so I don't know if I'm answering your question 100%. So my sense would be that through the practice of mental imagery, we can build into our unconscious mind automated responses and how we want to respond in moments of pressure, so that we avoid becoming too conscious, too aware of ourselves, too aware of our look, our feel, our, you know, that would be the main thing that would trip up performance. I think I'm sure there's more, but that's sort of where my head's at immediately.
Okay, no, that makes sense, and it definitely goes towards answering my question.
I think
how would
yeah, no,
sorry,
you go,
carry
you
on.
go.
How would, if we go back to Mookie, for example, and shadow batting, and basically he's talking about shadow batting, right? And shadow exercises can be utilized in all sports. So when it comes to the unconscious mind and that shadow batting, that is what you're saying. That's just reinforcing that if we spend time shadow batting, for example, that when we are now in a stress situation, a pressurized situation, that our body is more likely to be able to execute a particular shot because we've spent time visualizing it, not just the night before, but consistently over a period of time before performance.
Yeah,
that's what you're saying.
Yeah, 100%. And it's weird because that's exactly where I wanted to go.
Cool.
There's a synchronous moment here between you and I. I think one of the things that's often when people think about visualization or mental rehearsal is that I'm going to go lie on my bed, you know, and not move and sort of be quite still and just play these images through my mind. At times think that's really difficult because I think we've discussed a video clip of Mike Gervais, and he sort of alludes to the fact that a quiet mind is a rare thing. It's not something that's common. And so that type of sort of visualization where you just go lie on your bed, you close your eyes, I think that might be the most difficult way to do it. The easiest way to do it, and it is often prescribed if you look at psychological sort of literature, that you do it with the object in your hand. So you take your bat, put your gloves on, maybe not all your pads and everything, but you get sort of a feel for it. It's not just a thing that you're just seeing in your mind. You may be seeing the scenario play out, but you're also doing it at the same time. And most probably the most important part is that you're feeling in the way that you want to feel. So you practice that. And now I'm using feeling as in the emotional feeling, right?
Right.
So most probably
not feeling as in touch.
Well, I think both, right? I think both, because the mind is a sensory or multi-sensory experience that we look to create, rather than just an image that we're running through our mind. So if I could have my shoes on, say that I am going to wear certain types of spikes or as studs underneath, which puts a bit of pressure into your feet. So you have that on, you have your gloves on, and you sort of just get a feel for the movement, right? How it physically feels when you are, say, relaxed, calm, facing this bowler tomorrow. But at the same point in time, how could it emotionally feel? The butterflies in the stomach that could be there, and how you respond to that. The pressure of, if you play through the scenario. So if I'm a batter, what if he bowls me a bouncer and there's a big ooh around the crowd and I land on my bum, you know, and it's like rapid. What if there's inconsistent bounce? What if the bounce is beautiful and it's a flat wicket, you know? Because sometimes batters get tripped up with that they chuck their wickets away because, oh, geez, I should just be able to play all my shots here freely, and they make a bad decision. So we can play through these scenarios. And I think my understanding is that it's better to have the bat in your hand and sort of create the real experience as close to possible as you can, so that it's not just, okay, I'm stationary on my bed and I'm trying to imagine it.
That makes more sense to me. And also, you mentioned right up front at the beginning of this conversation is to incorporate all of your senses into this art of visualization, because it is an art, right? It's not. It's. I think it's something that you like to say. It's simple, but it's not easy, right? It's something that has to be practiced and executed on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So the more you can bring in all your emotions, all your senses, the actual the object that you use in your sport, whether it's a bat, a ball, whatever it might be, include that as well, so that it's as real as possible, and your subconscious mind is getting all that input at the same time, right?
Yeah, 100%. So I think earlier we spoke about at the start of the conversation. I must just find my thought. Yeah, it ran away. We spoke about, maybe let me leave that thought and just say what I want to say. So we spoke about that it's a skill that you've got to practice. That's where I want to be with it, right? We spoke about that. So quite naturally, the human brain, right, very naturally is, there's some people that have stats for it. I don't know if it's entirely true for everyone in this exact way, but quite naturally, the human brain is geared, if we had to think about positive and negative, not that that's my favorite thing to do, to think about it in that way. But the human brain is 4 out of 5 times, it would think some thought rather to keep you safe and away from harm versus stepping over the line, being in the heat of the moment, right? So our brain would have more a tendency to come up with, am I going to be okay? Am I going to fail? Don't stuff it up. Like that type of thinking. And maybe not as often with being calm, relaxed, facing a ball, being clear on a game plan, naturally, right? You can take this back to sort of our survival instinct, that's your brain's primary function, is to keep you alive. It'll do everything to achieve that, right? And it'll bomb you out in moments of pressure in the name of what it thinks is safe for you. And so a huge part of this is to create the safe space for your brain to know that you're okay. And you can call it trying to be positive, or practicing sort of a positive frame of mind for performance.
Mindfulness, would that be a good way to describe it?
Yeah, partly. But I think partly. I think mindfulness is something completely different. I think mindfulness is more just an okayness with a non-judgmental approach to your thoughts, right? So, there's this negative one. Well, I'm going to practice not reacting to that and just noticing it, as an oversimplification of what mindfulness is, right? It's like a non-judgment of yourself and your thoughts and what's happening inside of you. And maybe a curiousness to say, oh, geez, my brain's thinking this rubbish again. That's quite interesting. And to just notice, right, what is. And like I said, that's an oversimplification. There's a little bit more to that, but that's the starting point. So I think from a pure visualization point of view, it is so that we can train ahead of time the ability to remain positive, that ability to almost like override our brain's natural ability to want to just keep us safe. Sports by its nature brings pressure. By its nature, it puts you on show. By its nature, it has you in the spotlight where you've got to show up and do your thing. And so often the brain wants to kick out and bomb out and say too much. And so mental imagery is an opportunity to teach our brain that we're safe in those moments. And this is how we're going to go about it. This is how we're going to show up. This is how we're going to perform. And you know what? If this happens, well, then we're going to do that. And if that happens, then we're going to do that. And so it can quieten the brain. It can alleviate some of that internal chatter that we often see as negative, because it kind of just knows the brain is more prepared, for what's coming, versus not being prepared and then freaking out and saying, we got to get out of here.
Yeah, which is very much what Michael Phelps says in that clip as well. It's more about just not letting whatever is not meant to happen freaking you out, derailing you, causing you anxiety.
Yeah, I think we alluded to this in our second one, where we spoke about the swimmers at the Olympics, right? I wonder how many of them ahead of time saw that river was going to be that river was going to be nasty, And so I'm not expecting this river to be nasty. The water is supposed to be serene, like the, I don't know, crystal clear waters I practice in. And you come there and it's not. Okay, have you prepared for that? So, or are you at least in a place where you can be prepared for anything? Maybe the water wasn't something that you thought about, but we can train our brain through this practice to say, right, curveballs are going to come out of left field, out of right field, maybe straight on, maybe it's from behind. I don't know where it's going to come from, but I can remain calm. If something happens that I'm not okay with, I can remain calm. And so we can practice that calmness as a response to things, even if those things are unknown. We can, through this mental imagery, and I think by playing scenarios can certainly help. My sense is just we got to go one step further and say, well, what if something happens that I'm not prepared for? Then what? Okay, cool. I'm going to take a step back, and I can see myself taking a step back, taking a breath, taking a moment. Maybe I need to speak to people. Who am I going to speak to? If it's in performance, maybe it's talking to the ref or the judge or saying, whoa, if it's outside of that, who's my trusted people? Okay, I'm going to phone my dad. I'm going to phone my mom. Okay, cool. Let's go. Right. And so I have a strategy for at least if curveballs come that I'm unaware of. I have a way.
That makes sense. That makes sense to rather have a generalized strategy for any amount of things that go wrong, as opposed to having a narrow band of A, B, C, D, E. These 5 things could go wrong. I'm prepared if that happens. Yeah. But now if anything else happens and you have that narrow sort of way of looking at it, you could still be derailed. So what you've just been talking about now, in my mind, seems a lot more better preparation for anything that might happen.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, like it's often a case of, okay, great, Jody, you talk about this, but how do you use it? And so for me, I think I use that strategy more. I mean, I'm not in a performance environment. I'm not in that sense that I'm on the world stage. I'm a human being living my life, right? I do some coaching. I see clients. I live my life, with my wife and my son. And so I think for me, especially over the last couple of years, it's been that type of practice. And maybe that's why I'm such a big fan of it. Maybe that's why I speak to it so much, is that has been my practice. Is maybe in a similar way to Mookie. It's not a 10 o'clock in the morning I'm doing my visualization. It's sort of an ongoing throughout the day, at times very conscious awareness I have to practice like a sense of calmness and peace in terms of my reactions toward things. So it could be if my wife says something that I don't like, okay, cool. How do I want to be, right? I want to be able to listen, hear. And so while I'm doing that, the images come, right? The image comes of me, how I'm looking, how I'm sitting. Am I listening? Where's my attention? Is my attention on my phone, or is it looking at her and her, her eyes and hearing her voice? If I'm outside and I'm stuck in traffic, okay, cool. Can I just enjoy the traffic and enjoy the conversation? Well, maybe not enjoy the traffic, but enjoy the conversation with my wife. If I get to the beach and, it's cold, well, how am I going to respond or react? I find myself often going like, I'm not up for this. I don't want to do this. And so it's a big mental battle I got to fight, right? in a moment.
So that makes me feel and get the sense that it's more natural. It's more achievable to most people, right? And then it would be more beneficial on many different levels, not just specific to your performance, right?
Yeah.
It's something that can be practiced over and over again until it's part of who you are.
Yeah. Well,
so
I suppose maybe the one place where I am, like if I have to give a talk somewhere, right? I do play ahead of time through my mind. I will sit and say, okay, cool. How do I want to feel? What's the energy I want to show straight out the gate? Even when we do these, right?
Right.
Just this live, I'm like, okay, cool. And so a lot of that for me personally is just about being myself, being okay with being me, not trying to put on a show. So, I mean, I've had so many people at times tell me, yeah, but you and you are a lot, or you use certain words a lot, or, and I suppose as somebody that wants to do a podcast, maybe cutting some of those things out, or maybe being a bit more conscious about how I'm speaking, what I'm saying, how I'm saying it. But then at the same time, I'm okay with being me, and
right.
I would rather just be me, right? And so a lot of my challenge is to be less so now than say years gone by, where I was maybe very, very conscious of that. And now I don't really care too much, right? I show up as Jody, and so it's really just about me being able to say, okay, cool, on this stage, can I stand there and be me? There's a humor to me that a lot of people don't see. There's a seriousness about me. There's assertiveness, a clarity. And so my preparation normally for these types of things is that I speak my mind and that it's okay. And if I say something that if I say something that comes out wrong, well, I can always apologize. And, so it's like my scenarios for these types of things might be different.
Right.
But I'm very conscious of that I'm doing that. And a big part of that is just being able to walk on the stage and be myself, feel like I'm standing in my own shoes, feel comfortable in my own skin, and say, right, let's just go, right?
I love it.
Let's go, let's do your thing. And whatever we learn from this by the end, we'll learn by the end. But now it's time to sort of just do your thing. Speak your minds, listen if there's ask questions is a big thing for me, because I can have a tendency to just run off. So to be very aware of that, I'm asking questions, and even if I'm doing a talk, say on a stage or in front of kids at a school or whatever, to ask questions and get sort of feedback, because I think that textures my conversations a lot, to make sure that they hit the mark, rather than just I've got this thing that I've prepared that doesn't, right? I'm running completely off the point here. The point is just, even in my own life, I have ways and means to integrate this, right? So it's not just saying to other people, hey, you got to do this, it's so great. And it's my understanding that it's always there, and it's about our ability to create is maybe a better word, to create our internal sense of ourselves, of our performance, of how we want to execute it, how we want to respond in moments of crisis or moments that are curveballs for us, how we want to respond in those moments. We have ability to create that ahead of time and make our mind familiar with it.
Got you. Look, Phelps talked about, he mentioned that at a very early age, his coach taught him how to visualize, how to be prepared for all sorts of eventualities. So oftentimes I ask you this question. I always like to ask you this question, regardless of what topic we're talking about, is for young kids, for parents, coaches of young kids, where do they start? Where do they start with playing around with visualization, trying to work it into their process, trying to see how it would work for them as the unique individuals that they are? Where would one start with that?
Yeah, I think those Michael Phelps questions could be a great place for any parent to start with their children. So how should your race go today? Like how should it be for you? And maybe to listen beyond just I should score 100 or I should win, and so, okay, but how should the feeling of that be, right? What should all the senses of that be? You know, how should you feel during your performance today? How should you be as a teammate? How should, you know, and you can just ask that question into multiple directions. Okay, well, you know, how could it go today? Like, what's all the things that could go wrong, and how do we want to be when that happens? How do we want to respond? You know, and what are we going to do if it really goes badly today? Like, if it doesn't go the way you want it to go, then what? You know. And I think by asking those questions, maybe of our children, say a day ahead of time, saying could be the car ride after practice, and say, hey, for tomorrow's game, let's go. You know, and you start a little routine. You know, I wouldn't say on the morning of. Ideally, you know, if there was a good time in the week leading up to the performance, might be better.
And just in your normal conversation, right?
Hey, at the
it's not a specific conversation, just part of a normal conversation, any conversation.
Yeah. Then it's not a forceful thing, right? You have to go. I think a nice routine could be like if you say have 2 or 3 practices in a week, you'd have that type of conversation maybe early in the week. Say, hey, how should it go this on Saturday? You know, oh no, Saturday. Where are we playing again? Oh, we're playing in this place. Oh yeah, we're playing against that team. Okay, cool. So how should it go? Geez, no, they got these people that are challenging me in this way. So, okay. And so you could sort of start thinking about that ahead of time at the start of a week, which then gives you an opportunity to practice for the shoulds, the coulds, and the not wants in the week. So that come Saturday, you're prepared for that.
I like that because it's just making them think about it a little bit before time. And if they really are, to maybe not overthink it, or even be open to having a discussion with you about something that they might be worried about or hadn't thought about yet. Yeah. So really just opening those channels of communication, right?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't mentioned this yet, but another strategy that could be really cool for those who operate in this way is there's some people out there that love journaling. So that could be 3 great questions that you can ask at the start of a week. How should Saturday go for me? How should my game on Wednesday go? You just write down. Okay, what could happen? Well, what could happen is this, you know. What could happen is this. Okay, how do I want to respond with that? How do I want to be when that happens? How do I not want it to go? You know, I don't want to arrive there and be flustered, even if I'm late. You know, I don't want to be unkind to my teammates. I don't want to cause bad blood. I don't, like whatever it might be, right? I don't want to stand there and not have a clear plan. Okay, right. So then, what's my strategy for that? And then I can go into the week practicing for that. And then you really, that would be the ultimate, right? So there was this research done years and years ago, long time ago with basketball. People, it's sort of normally gets referenced in these types of conversations. So they found 3 groups of athletes. Maybe it wasn't all athletes. Maybe it was beginners. I'm not too sure. But they find 3 groups of people. The first group, they did nothing with them, right? The second group, they got them in to come physically shoot basketballs at a hoop for 20 minutes a day. The last group came in for 20 minutes a day, and all they did was mental imagery, okay? No physical practice. And I think they did it over 2 weeks or something like that. At the end of the 2 weeks, they tested them again. The group who did nothing showed no improvement. The group who did the physical shooting of the ball improved by 24%. The group who just did mental imagery improved by 23%. Now, you could say like, okay, well, then I don't need to do physical practice, you know, because just my mind can get me there. And although there could be truth in that in certain sports, I certainly think there's a lot for actually physically doing it. And so the superpower of this actually comes when you combine the mental imagery with physical practice. That is where the real superpower of this stuff sits. So I think to do a visualization or mental imagery sort of along the lines of what Phelps uses at the start of a week, leading into a performance, that merges these 2 worlds a little bit more, right? And so then tomorrow I can repeat it based on today's practice.
Right.
And so
it's almost like it subconsciously guides the physical, right?
Yes. And then once I've done the physical, it maybe textures the mental stuff again. It sort of adjusts it and says, okay, cool, well, maybe I shouldn't see myself doing it in this way. I should see myself doing it in this way rather. Yeah. So
okay.
And I maybe just there was some research paper on this that I saw, and like when you combine them, it was something like people improved their performance by like 300% or 100% or whatever. So I think the real magic of the stuff, doing the mental work, sits in combination with the physical work, not either or, not one or the other. So it's almost like if you don't engage with it, well, it's great, you're going to improve. If you engage with it, but you keep it separate, it'll help. But it's really the merger of the two, understanding that you're not a mind and a body, right? You're a human being, and your mind and your body is intertwined, and it's one thing. And so if you work on the one and you bring it to the other, and you work on the physical and you bring it into your mind, then I think you're connecting things a little bit better, and you ultimately get maximum benefit from it.
Makes sense. It also makes sense when we talk about not siloing the mental side of the game to something that you just look at when you're not performing. It's something that you do. You focus on as much as your nutrition, your sleep, your physical practice. It's part and parcel of all the ingredients in your cocktail.
Yes.
So yeah, I brought it back to the cocktail.
Yes.
Which is very very important.
Yeah.
Do we want to finish off with a little inspirational clip that we talked about?
Yeah, we can, right? I think that this little clip from Djokovic is, I think he's sort of well known that he uses a lot of mental skills. If there's some viral clips about breathing with him, that it's not sort of something that comes naturally. It's something that you've got to work at. And so I think, he just gives an example of how this is actually part of everything we do, even from a young age. And I think hopefully it just encourages people to say, what am I actually busy with in my mind? Am I just letting it run on autopilot, or am I conscious about where I'm going with this and what I'm doing? Okay. This clip is from the Mentor House on Instagram.
I would just like to send a message to every young person out there, whatever you're pursuing in the world, whether it's tennis, sports, or anything else. I was a 7-year-old dreaming that I could win Wimbledon and become #1 in the world one day. As I said, I'm beyond grateful and blessed to be standing here with so many incredible achievements. But one thing is for sure, I feel that I had the power to create my own destiny. I try to visualize every single thing in my life, not only believe it, but really feel it with every cell in my body. And I just want to send a message out there to every young person: be in the present moment, forget about what happened in the past. Future is something that is just going to happen, but if you want a better future, you create it. Take the means in your hands, believe it, create it.
7-6.
Yeah, sorry about the sound. It got a bit loud there at the end, but I think that's a great place to wrap up today.
Agree.
Yeah.
It's been a good chat, Jodes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for everybody listening and supporting our show. If you haven't watched any of our shows before, this is the 4th episode in this series. So please do have a look at the first 3 episodes. Jodes, you can tell everybody where to find them.
Yeah. So you can obviously listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, the Performance Formula podcast. Yeah, on YouTube, the replay. Please, if we add any value to you through anything that we do here at the Performance Formula, please follow us, subscribe, like, share, do all the good stuff. At the end of the day, it's not just about us. It's also about other people getting the same value that you get, or maybe they get different value, right? But yeah.
Yeah. And if there's any particular topic that anybody would like us to cover on future episodes, we're only too happy to receive feedback and suggestions.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Justin. Have a great day.
You too. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.